Okay, we're going to be solving two-step inequalities. We've solved one step this week, and we're going to be solving two-step today. So just like on equations and your addition and subtraction and multiplication and division inequalities, you're going to undo your addition and subtraction with the inverse operation, which is like the opposite operation. So adding and subtracting are opposites or inverse of each other. So you're going to undo multiplication and division with the inverse or opposite operation. So multiplying and dividing are opposite of each other, just like we've been doing for weeks. So when you multiply or divide by a negative number, the inequality sign is flipped, okay? So like if it was this, and you were dividing by or multiplying by a negative number, you are going to flip it to this, and we'll see this in our examples. You are going to watch for negative coefficients, okay? So a coefficient is going to be a number that, for example, is going to be multiplied or divided or squished up really close to a variable. So this is the coefficient. If you saw 2 times a written, 2 would be the coefficient. So if it was a negative coefficient, you need to pay attention to those because that is when your inequality sign will flip. All right, so we look at this. It says 10 plus 3 times k is less than or equal to 22. So we're going to go ahead and box this right here, and we're going to say, all right, this is my coefficient. It is not negative. Okay, if there was a subtraction sign there, that we would consider that negative, but it is not, so our sign will not be flipped on this. Our sign at the very end of our simplified inequality is going to be still that exact less than or equal to sign. So just like our two-step equations, we want to, when we have PEMDAS, remember our multiplication and division and addition and subtraction. So our addition and subtraction are going to be done last, but when we're undoing things, okay, so when we're undoing things, we're going to kind of work backwards. So we always do our addition and subtraction first. We undo those first. So it says here that we are adding this 10 to this. So we're going to do the opposite of adding 10, which is subtracting 10. What I do to one side, I do to the other. 10 minus 10 cancels to 0, and I don't have to write that anymore. And now I have 22 minus 10, which is going to be 12. So I'm going to write my exact sign down, and then I'm going to write this 3k. It was not negative because it did not have a subtraction or a negative sign in front of the coefficient. So we have 3 times k is less than or equal to 12. And so if we're going to be solving for our variable, we want to isolate k all by itself. So multiplying 3, k times 3 is going on. So multiplication is going on. So the opposite of multiplication, the inverse of multiplication is division. So what we do to one side, we do to the other. 3 divided by 3 is 1, which is something that I do not have to write down there because times 1 doesn't change anything. And 12 divided by 3 is 4. So this says k, this unknown number, can be anything less than or equal to 4. So we want 4 somewhere on our number line. Because it can be equal to 4, it's going to be a closed dot. And since k can also be less than 4, we're going to go less than like this. All right, so on this one, it is a little bit, looks a little different because you have usually the bulk of your problem is on the left side, but it's going to be on the right side. We're going to work it exactly the same, except our variable is going to be on the right. So I'm going to box this number, and I'm going to watch for negative coefficients so that to see if I need to flip the sign. So since this is a negative 4 being multiplied by h, I am going to have to flip the sign by the end. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now so that I don't forget. All right, so we're going to get our addition and subtraction out of the way first. We're going to undo this minus 5, which is plus 5 is the opposite of it. So what we do to one side, we do to the other. And this cancels out. I'm going to rewrite everything the way it is so far. And 19 plus 5 is going to be 24. So now we want to isolate this h all by itself. So because we're multiplying by 4 here, h times negative 4, we're going to divide by negative 4. We're going to do the opposite of that. So what I do to one side, I do the other side. This cancels to 1. And because I divided by a negative, I'm going to go ahead and flip the sign. So 24 divided by 4 is 6. And a positive divided by a negative is going to be a negative. So again, if you like the number first, that doesn't confuse you, then you're going to go ahead and graph this normally. I'm going to go ahead, my brain likes the variable first. So if I flip these, I also have to flip this sign like this. Okay, so negative 6 is less than h, so that means h is bigger. So h is greater than negative 6. So I've got an open dot on 6, and I'm going to have my ray going this way to show all the possibilities that h could be. All right, so let's go here. Actually, we're going to go back to this. Let's go to here. So we are going to solve for a. We want to see what a could be. So first we want to get rid of our adding and subtracting. So the opposite of plus 9 is minus 9. That cancels out. And this becomes 18. So we have 18 here, and let's copy everything else down that we haven't done yet. So we have a divided by, we have negative 6 times a. Negative 6 times a. And so to get rid of that times negative 6, we need to divide by negative 6. So what I do to one side, I do to the other. This cancels out. 18 divided by negative 6 is going to be negative 3. And because, I should have boxed this, because that is a negative coefficient, we need to go ahead and we need to switch our signs. So this right there would need to be graphed. So number your number line. So we have a closed dot. Brain's not here today. These are negative. So we've got negative 3, we've got negative 4, we've got negative 2. So we have a closed dot on negative 3. And since a is going to be greater than or equal to negative 3, we need to go this way. All right, let's do this one. We need to get rid of this minus 8 first. So let's box our coefficient. It's not negative, so we won't need to flip the sign. So to get rid of minus 8, we're going to add 8. What I do to one side, I do to the other. This cancels. This becomes 40. Write everything else down that I haven't done yet. So we're going to solve for x. How do I get rid of times 4? Well, I'm going to divide by 4 and do the opposite operation. So what I do to one side, I do to the other. This cancels, and that becomes 10. So in order to graph it, it can't be equal to 10. So we're going to have an open dot on 10, and we're going to go this way because x is anything less than 10. So where that ray is touching could be all the possible solutions for x. All right, so we're going to solve for x here. We need to get rid of adding and subtracting first. So the opposite of minus 9 is adding 9. Oh, I noticed something there. I have a negative coefficient, so I'm going to have to flip the sign in a minute. So I have a negative 21 plus a 9. So if I wanted to do my t-chart, if I can't do that in my head, I have a negative 21 and a positive 9. If I swing and subtract, I'm going to get a 12, which is on the negative side, so it's a negative 12. So remember, because this is negative right here, I'm going to have to flip my sign. So if I divide by negative 8 to get rid of that, I do what I do to one side, I do to the other. 12 divided by 8 is going to be 1.5. Sorry, I'm so used to putting equal signs. And a negative divided by a negative is going to be a positive. So because we divided by a negative, we're going to have to flip that sign. So the reason that we flip the sign, I didn't explain this, is because when you change a positive to a negative, okay, so we brought that negative over here. It's kind of, remember when I said in negative world, everything is the opposite. So now you've made this side smaller than it was because you brought a negative over. And so that's one explanation of why we have to flip the sign. So we have an open dot on 1.5, and we're going less than to the left. Okay, let's go back up to this one. We need to get rid of this plus 3, so we're going to minus 3. What we do to one side, we do to the other. That becomes 3. And then this right here, this is our coefficient that's multiplied by the variable, by the r, and it's not negative, so we're not going to have to flip the sign. So if we solve for r, we need to, this is multiplying by 1/2. So in order to divide by 1/2, okay, we have to KCF, which is just multiplying by the reciprocal. So we're going to multiply by the reciprocal. We're going to flip. So when we say 2 times 1 is 2 and 1 times 2 is 2, that just all cancels out to 1. So it cancels each other out. And what we do to one side, so if we have to divide by this, which means multiplying by this, we do it to this side as well. So 3 times 2 is 6, 1 times 1 is 1, and we didn't have to flip our sign, so r is going to be less than 6. So we have 6, we have an open dot, and we go this way.